motherhood,
and daughterhood,
and every hood in between. You're tuned into the PnK Connection. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Thank you for joining us once again. I am Michelle Valentine, the mother.
And I am Morgan Valdes, the daughter.
Let's kick it off, my princess. And we're going to kick it off with the pink print. Now, What exactly is the pink print? Let's just refresh everybody's memory.
The pink print is something that we just like to do to just pay homage to the women that we feel like are really doing it right now. So the women or mother-daughter duo that we feel like are really excelling in whatever that they're doing and just, bringing womanhood to the spotlight in the best way they possibly can.
And they're serving the community, whether it be a local community, a worldwide community, or, just in a specific silo, they're doing something amazing.
Absolutely.
And so this episode's pink print is?
This episode's pink print is going to the Xi Chi Omega chapter of the Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. As we all know, October, or maybe you don't know, October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, okay? So they actually held an amazing walk in Peekskill to raise money for a cure for breast cancer and to also just put the awareness onto the map. And we were actually really privileged to partake in the walk.
Yes, your favorite mother-daughter duo were there, front and center,
absolutely.
And we were walking in the heat, the autumn heat. It was a beautiful day.
It was. We got the perfect weather for
We
it.
were able to fellowship and get our workout on and move our bodies and really, show up and show out and donate money for this amazing cause.
Yes, it was a 4-mile walk. So we were out there pumping our legs for a good cause.
Over the hills, through the woods. It was nice. We really enjoyed it. So really, really well-deserved that chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. And they're an amazing group and they're very near and dear to our heart. So that being said, we are going to move right into this topic.
Yes.
Okay. It's a topic that I think many have experienced, but I don't think we talk about so much outwardly. Morgan and I talk a lot, so we have actually been talking about it, and we often talk about it with our eyes when we are in public spaces.
Absolutely.
But, I think this is something that needs to be talked about because you might be feeling the same way and know that you're not alone. So the topic is, she's so cute too. Who does she think she is? It is an energy shift, right? From embracing our little baby girls, loving their little pigtails, to as she begins to mature and become a woman herself, somehow becomes, from being cute to your competition.
Right.
And I hate it. But
hate it too.
It happens, and I think we should talk about it.
Absolutely. I think it is something we need to talk about so we can address it, call it out, and hopefully change it. Okay.
Agreed.
But before we dive so deep into that, I want to talk about the good memories. So what are some good memories that you have with the older women? And I say older, but I'm not saying like old lady women. I'm saying just the older women who you kind of looked up to or admired from my age or younger. What were those type of relationships you kind of had with them?
So my mom had a nice core of girlfriends.
Okay.
Right? Marian, God rest her soul. I loved Marian. She bought me my luggage for college, and she had a car, and she was single. And I was like, I want to be like Marian when I grow up. I want to be single in my own apartment up in Harlem, and I'm going to be doing it. So I loved her. She was always really supportive of me. And then I had my Aunt Jackie. And, they were the women that I looked up to. I had my Aunt Barbara, who was a fashionista in her own right. I always looked up to her. And I'm really blessed to say that they were very supportive of the things that I was doing.
Right.
And always showed up, showed out, and, supported me. And there's nothing like having that female support. My mom, amazing, but there's nothing like having that female support being around you and
having aunties around
and looking out for you. And it's a great feeling.
Absolutely. I can say the same. We didn't have many other women around, but your close-knit community of your close best friends who I called aunties, they were around. They literally seen me grow up. I grew up with their kids. Most of their kids were a little older than I, but they were like my big siblings, my big brothers, my big sisters and stuff. And then also just being in church, a lot of the women there were also women who were in my part of my village who supported me, doted on me, cheered me on and everything. So I would say for the most part, I definitely had pretty good relationships with these women,
That's it. But then somewhere, and not in every space.
Right.
I just want to make sure that I say that. But in some of those spaces, it shifted a little bit. What do you think happened?
Yeah, it definitely did. If I'm being honest, I noticed the shift around the age of 13. I feel like the age of 13, it's like, I'm a teenager. I'm about to go to high school. I'm feeling myself hormonally and everything in between, but I'm feeling myself because I'm becoming a young woman. I'm starting to care more about my hair, I'm starting to care more about my makeup, what I'm wearing and everything like that. But I also noticed that I wasn't the only one who started to care about those things.
So I just want to say this. It wasn't necessarily people who were close to us.
Right.
Because this can happen from random women.
And it
or
does.
women you just meet in your adolescent
Right.
stage, right? Giving you a side eye or
Right.
whatever, what have you. But I think, that social media thing, right?
Yes. So also when I was about 14, 15, that was like the height of Instagram. That was the height of, Facebook was already something kind of known, but Instagram really kind of changed the playing field for me, especially because it was only pictures. At least on Facebook, you could post a status or two, right? Twitter was a little different.
Right.
But Instagram was strictly photos. And I feel that it gave people access. Social media in general gives people access to other people that they may know, but but also very well may not know. And it gives them, the amount of access it gives them also leads them to make their own perception of that person that might not totally be accurate.
Yeah, remember that time someone said to your grandmother, "Oh, do you see what your granddaughter is doing on Instagram? A person who doesn't even know you
At all.
not in your life." And what are you doing, ma'am? What are you even doing looking at her, ma'am?
Woman. I'm literally 14, okay? And this was just one of many stories that occurred at this adolescent age that I was at. I'm like, are you serious right now? Why are you even checking for me?
And as your mom, I think there were times when I was like, maybe you shouldn't post that or something like that. But I'm your mom. I have a vested interest. I know you, and I know that maybe this might not be you or might not be the representation of you. But we are
you have to go through those
in
moments.
charge of rearing and guiding our children.
Right.
And but the external,
and it didn't come from. It's different if it comes from I'm just looking out kind of perspective.
And didn't always feel that way, right?
And a lot of the time, it didn't come from that. It came from what does she What does she think she's like? It came very much like a hater vibe. Well, are you mad? So
probably that's the thing, right?
So that's definitely a thing. And then there were just other scenarios of similar situations. I'll never forget the time I was literally at an event with a bunch of other kids. I'm one of 6 kids at the table, and I'm using a spoon. I'm just eating the ice cream. And I guess to this adult who decided to give me her input unwarranted, I looked inappropriate by using the spoon in a way that I don't know where her mind was. It was somewhere in the gutter. But she tried to kind of check me as it pertains to me eating my ice cream in a very regular way. You're putting these sexual innuendos onto this child because of your own perceptions. Whatever. And it's just it's really ugly in my opinion.
Sometimes it's projection. Yeah. I would love to say that it was more rooted in protection. Although it doesn't always feel that way. Mm-mm. I know. I have a slightly different story because I didn't grow up in the social media era. What you saw of me in pictures or when I was younger was very, very calculated, deliberate.
Right.
And it wasn't just me in my own self. Right. For you and your generation, it's different. We're getting an opportunity to see other things, and people are forming opinions. And sometimes it's women, older women, forming opinions on younger women or girls. And I just don't like it. I don't like when older women say, "Oh, she's fast." You know, that's something that I will always interject and say, stop projecting sexuality on a young girl.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
Because it's usually super innocent unless you make it something else.
I would say 9 times out of 10, the girl is not even thinking that way.
Honestly.
Again, it is her mom's job and the women around her to guide her into the proper etiquette and behaviors and stuff like that. But I might say she's rude or she's mouthy, right? But I never think fast. You know what I'm saying? Because a fast connotation to me implies sexuality. And I don't like that.
Some major history behind that. So if we dive deep into the history of the negative connotations that people and society has constantly placed on young girls, all we are literally doing is perpetuating the same narrative.
Yeah.
And I don't want to keep pushing that narrative.
Historically, even more so, Black girlhood and Black womanhood has been spotlighted in a way that hasn't been positive or useful or conducive to our success, to our mental health. Right. And I don't know if they do this in other cultures. I think they do because we live in a misogynistic world in general.
But it's a little different. To me, it's different.
Because sometimes we do it to ourselves, right? And I would expect better from us on us.
Right.
I would love to see better from us on us. Right? And maybe it happens to other cultures, but this is the culture that I'm most experienced in and vested in. And I want us to be given more grace to each other.
Absolutely.
Right? And more guidance to each other and embracing each other more. Our young girls need us.
It truly takes a village, okay? So that village can't be tainted. It needs to be kind and warm and safe for us to be ourselves and not feel that you're constantly secretly judging me or overtly judging me, you know? And it doesn't just happen with young girls and significantly older women. Like this has happened in situations where it's just a weird energy with young women that I feel like are just a little bit older than I. You know, so we constantly talk about another situation that I experienced where this young woman literally saw me grow up. Maybe she was like 5-6 years older than I. So she used to be like a big sister of sorts to me, you know, and whenever she was around me, she would have me in her arms and just, you know, doting on the baby that's in the environment, right? As a, 10-year-old, a 12-year-old, and I'm maybe like 6, right? So it was some time that I hadn't seen her, and we ended up going to some event that she had to support her on a major accolade that she was receiving. And we pull up to the event, and her energy was just so strange. Like it was almost as if like,
why are you here?
Yeah, the vibe was so odd. I didn't even know how to respond to it. Honestly, I tried to kind of kill her with kindness. I kind of tried to stay true to myself. I'm like, this is someone I consider like my cousin or something, you know? Like, I'm thinking like, hey, cousin, I haven't seen you in forever. And she's like, yeah, we're going to keep it that way. So, I don't know. People have to, you know, and she might not even know. Right.
You know what I'm saying?
That's true. It might be subconscious. She might not even be realizing it.
So, it is what it is. And I would like to see less of it.
Me too.
That's what I would say, because it does nothing for anyone. I know that we, it's called the adultification of Black girls, right? Sometimes you look at a young woman, a young girl, adolescent, you know, preteen years, and maybe, you know, she's tall, or maybe she has developed a little early, which girls are doing now more.
It's in food.
Exactly. And you're looking at this child who's mentally a child, and you're thinking of her as an adult. You know,
it's not fair.
You're giving her energy that you would give another woman.
And honestly, but you shouldn't even be giving that energy to another woman. I don't go into a room and try to size up the next young woman that I see. I don't feel the need to do that.
You don't, but it happens. We both know that it happens a lot.
It's so unhealthy, though.
It is unhealthy, but it starts in adolescence, right?
Starts internally, I feel too. You know, like all of these issues that I feel like I've encountered, I feel like it was strictly rooted in internal issues that person themselves are dealing with, their own insecurities. I don't think it has anything to do with the fact of what I really look like. I think it's a personal problem that they're projecting and putting onto me at that point.
And what do I always say about personal problems?
And it needs to stay.
Let it be theirs.
Their problem.
You know? But that does not negate that it's a societal energy as well, right? Statistically, I mean, we can say that I think 2.7% of Black girls are more likely than girls of other cultures to be adultified and placed in the penal system. We get punished at higher rates. We get punished more like adults. Everybody has maybe seen those videos of them handcuffing a little girl or a little boy, because this can transcend sex, right? It could be male or female, but to throw a little girl to the ground in a swimsuit, you know what I'm saying? That's a child, still a child, and it happens in society, and we've almost normalized it.
Not almost, we absolutely have normalized it.
I mean, well, you'll have people in an uproar for a little while, but it fades.
Right, but when we're doing things like this within our own community, we're just taking these ideologies that were placed onto us and normalizing them within our own existence, we should be the wall to be like, you know what, that's what's going on out there. I want this to be a safe haven in here. And we're not doing that.
We're not. I mean, again, society starts perceiving Black girls as less innocent, right? Earlier than they do girls of other ethnicities.
It makes me sad.
It's a sad thing. But it happens. And if we keep having the conversation, it is my hope that it will start to happen less.
Yeah.
And that's really the point. That's really the purpose of this conversation. Because sometimes I listen to you and I feel your pain. I see your angst. I see the way it bothers you. I see the hurt.
Yeah.
And it's unnecessary.
Yeah.
And it hurts. See a little Black girl and I want to hug her. I see a Black teenager and I want to hug her.
It hurts that much more, especially when you feel like you're showing up genuine. You're showing up with nothing but good intentions and you're just trying to be yourself. And you're like, you get that sense of rejection immediately. And it's like, oh, what was that for? It does hurt my inner child at points, So, I mean, that's something I personally have to work on internally and not to personalize that and understand to remove myself, subtract myself from that equation. That it has nothing to do with me.
And let's start with being honest, right? So if you see yourself doing it, check yourself.
Right.
Because of this conversation and maybe hearing it from the other side, how it's received, how it hurts. If you see yourself inching into that space, check yourself. Examine your reasons. Like, why am I responding to this girl this way? Why am I responding to this young woman this way? What about me is making me respond to her this way? And then it transcends all the way up to other women. Why do I respond to other women this way? Why am I walking in a room sizing up the competition when you're really in competition with yourself?
Honestly.
So if we can start with how we treat our girls, we can transcend into the way that we treat our teenagers, and then we can capitalize on the way that we treat each other.
Right.
And that's what my hope is.
And it's like the oldest book and the oldest rule in the book, right? Treat others how you would want to be treated. Would you want to walk into a room and feel these negative energies, these negative vibes toward whatever you have going on? I don't think anybody would want that. You know what I mean? I don't think that.
I have a problem with the treat people the way that you want to be treated statement in general, because everybody has different parameters for how they want to be. Because there are people like, I don't care if you would treat me like that.
But that's not true. And I don't think that's true. I feel that when people say, I don't care,
sometimes they don't, but you don't know. Maybe they've gotten to the point where they don't care. Maybe they could genuinely not care at some point.
Yeah.
Right? So treat people how they want to be treated.
But you don't always know how someone would want to be treated.
But you know that nobody wants to be met with nastiness.
Right. That's true.
Right?
Just be kind.
Just be kind.
Just be kind.
To yourself first and then to others, right? But, society this is a thing.
It is.
Because they're writing books on it. The Georgetown Law Journal wrote Girlhood Interrupted, the Erasure of Black Girls' Childhood in 2017. Right? And then
that was over 8 years ago.
Then we have the National Library of Medicine. They did a qualitative study this year.
Right.
Talking about the adultification of young Black females and the impact it has on their health and mental well-being. right? So whenever we start talking about, self-care,
Right.
self-preservation, taking care of ourselves mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually, it starts with how we treat our girls, right? Or it starts with how that mother treats herself, how she projects onto her daughter.
Right.
And then
man.
that's it. We have to get to the
continuous
root,
cycle.
right?
So domino effect.
Well, I hope that the PnK Connection today is sparking a conversation.
Yes.
We don't have a lot of time to go even deeper because we could, but spark the conversation and have these conversations amongst your female group.
Right.
We are gathering in social groups, D9 organizations, professional organizations, book clubs even.
Right.
Talk about these things so that we can nip it at the bud and actually make changes in the world.
Absolutely.
And
honestly, you're not always going to have the opportunity to have these conversations with people, right? But what you can do is try not to add fuel to the fire. If you know that this person is going through their internal stuff and you can, I know it's hard, but if you can subtract yourself from the equation, try your best to do so. Don't feed it. And try to kill it with kindness. I mean, I'm not saying let someone completely disrespect you. But if it's like, the comments, the petty comments, choose to ignore it. Understand that they're showing you just how miserable they already are. There's no need to
that happens in a lot of spaces, like with older relatives. Oh, look at you. Or
Look
when you
at
walk
you.
into the church or whatever, somebody will say something. I'll put it like this. You don't have to respond to everything.
You don't.
Sometimes some people do require a response.
But not in the church.
In the fellowship hall, maybe? I don't know. It depends on the day for me.
Listen, you just got to think to yourself, you mad because you old and shriveling up. All right.
Your grandmother at her ripe age, right, has gotten hate from other people in the church.
Well, if you see my grandma, you would understand why she got hate. Because she is that girl.
Wearing a short dress. And I tell my mother, that's right. And you will continue to
show them legs, girl.
You will continue to wear that short dress, and she's just mad because she
exactly.
Can't.
So that's what I'm saying. When you know they just mad, how you hating from outside the club kind of energy.
I'm the one that'll say, "Oh, don't you wish you could wear it?" But I'm grown. So, it's a little different.
Grown. They're going to tell my mama who's going to tell her mama. It's
They're
going to
tell your mama to no avail. Okay? How about go pray? You're in the church.
Right,
That's
why are we even talking about this in church? We should be talking about the Lord.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I hope that this sparks some conversations because that's really where you get to the healing. Just talking about stuff and being about stuff, right? Yep. It starts with the conversation, but then it concludes with the action. Right? Because a lot of talk and no action really results in nothing.
Right.
So I'm hoping to make some changes.
I would hope that this conversation not only just leaves a mark on you, but it prompts you to also just want to come together more in sisterhood and womanhood. Be more supportive of one another instead of looking down on each other or looking at each other as competition. About actually cheering each other on and remembering that a younger flower blooming doesn't steal the sun from the flower that bloomed first. They share the same garden. And at the end of the day, we're all in the same garden. We fighting
with the same dirt.
Right. Okay.
Right.
So it's not that serious. It's just honestly, we can just be a part of each other's support system if we allow it to be so.
What do you think are some of the ways that older women can support younger women when they see them, and some of the things that they can say or do?
Right.
What from your generation would you like to see women in my generation do as it pertains to you?
So you guys are filled with wisdom. You know what I mean? If you genuinely feel like my skirt is too short for the church, right? Because let's be honest, there are some things that are appropriate, some things that aren't appropriate. Instead of it being rooted in jealousy or hate, turn it into something like a teachable moment. And that also means you don't correct publicly to humiliate as well. If you genuinely feel a way about something I have, this is just an example, but if you genuinely feel a way about something I have on, it's okay for you to pull me aside like, hey, we're here in church. I would love to see you in something a little more modest. And there's nothing wrong with saying that. And as young women, we also have to be receptive and be able to accept that she's just looking out for me. Not everybody's a hater. Okay. But
that's true.
It takes the coming togetherness to really be able to get places with one another, understanding that she's coming from But you have to actually be coming from a place of wisdom and care, but coming from a place of wisdom and just, I care about you. And I have to be open to be like, okay, I can hear this, I can accept this, and I can make my decision as it pertains to what I want to do next. So just having the best intentions possible, I'm more than receptive and happy to receive someone's wisdom if they are coming from the right place.
I think that it has to do a lot with how you interact with that person regularly.
That too.
It's difficult
what is this
also
relationship, right?
to do it with strangers, right? And sometimes maybe you should refrain,
I
right?
agree.
But if someone that you have a relationship with and you have always greeted her with kindness,
right?
If you've always been nasty, then
anything
you're not going to receive it.
I was going to say
right?
anything
But if
they
you've
say.
greeted her with kindness, it'll be more well received. So I think the lesson is to make sure that you're typically kind, right, when interacting with anyone, but our younger daughters, our younger nieces, our younger girls in general, so that they are willing to listen to you.
Right. And I think that can also be done in the opposite, understanding from an older perspective that you can also learn something from the younger women around you too. Sure. They are also they have a fresh perspective. Times are changing. Things are different. Things are not necessarily how they used to be back in your day. So being open to hearing that side of the conversation too. I just feel like if both participants of the conversation come to the table with no expectations, but also just open-mindedness and just willingness to understand and hear each other out, there can be no wrong that can be done.
And we'll change it one conversation at a time.
Absolutely. You're at the PnK Connection.
Awesome. So what's up?
All right. So I think that was a very fruitful, fulfilling conversation.
As always, our goal here is to bring you guys into our personal conversations. We have a lot of them. We have nurtured and cultivated our relationship for a long period of time. We've had our ups, our downs, our ins, our outs, and we will continue to do so.
Absolutely.
But at the end of it and the beginning of it and in the middle of it, there's nothing but love.
Nothing but love.
Yeah.
So with that being said, we want to close out this episode of the PnK Connection with yet another one of our recurring segments. But this one's new. This one's called Mother-Daughter Moments. This is just a beautiful moment for them just to reflect on an interesting or monumental moment that they've had with their mother or their daughter and talk about it. So I can kick this one off this time. I want to talk about the moment that actually happened last week. So last week the last couple of days, honestly, I've been kind of just feeling a little gray, feeling a little blue, feeling like just trying to figure things out, emotionally feeling bleh, And I really appreciated the other morning when I came downstairs and I saw my mom and she could clearly see something was wrong, but I didn't feel, I don't know if the word is comfortable enough, or I didn't want to impose on her and tell her what was going on, all the things that I'm feeling. And she didn't just let me slide by and just go crawl back into my cave upstairs in my room. She actually took a moment and said, "Hey, what's going on?" She noticed that I was down and she wanted to be there for me. She stopped and said, she didn't know exactly what I was feeling, but she gave me a little pep talk telling me that, you're going to be fine. It's going to be great. I need you to be great. You're going to be great. We need each other. And her just expressing to me how much we really do need each other made me feel a lot better after the conversation. Because like I said, like we continuously preach on the PnK Connection, how much women need each other. It was just that in real life, in real time, so I really appreciated that.
Aww.
I loved it. It made me feel seen. It made me feel heard. And it made me feel cared for. And it was something I needed to fill my cup in that moment.
So for me, it's been a crazy week. It's been a busy week. I juggle a lot. But the preparation for this show today, I really loved the alignment that we experienced.
Right.
We were kind of like shooting off ideas, trying to figure out what would be a wonderful topic, an important topic, and an interesting topic.
Mm-hmm.
And we settled upon this topic, but we were just feeling each other,
right?
And we were in alignment. We were doing it in our pajamas in my office in the house.
Yes.
And we were, sipping on a little coffee and talking about it. And I felt like, you know what? We're going in the right direction and we're going in the right direction together.
Yes.
That made me feel good.
And we're
because-
growing in the right direction.
That's right. So yeah, that was mine.
Yes. All right, guys. Well, thank you for tuning into the PnK Connection. As always, make sure you guys are following us on all platforms at the PnK, that's pink without an I, PnK Connection on all platforms.
And that's what we got.
All right. Love you. and
Till next
catch
time,
you on the
you
next
guys.
one.
It's more than a meeting.
It's a movement. Bye.
Motherhood
And daughterhood.
and every hood in between. You're tuned into the PnK Connection.